Hey Fly Tyers, welcome back. I'm Matt, and thank you for stopping by. Now I've got a pretty fun video for you today. I've gotten several questions about how do I make my own custom dubbing, and I promised that I'd make a video on that, so that's what you're about to see. First off, what all do you need for making this? Well, I'm gonna go through this right now. First, you really need something to put it in. I've got a mess spread out on my bench right here, but a container like this works great. This is about $5 from Walmart or Michael's. I will take this and 1/4-inch drill, just put holes in the back of it. You put your dubbing in from the front, and this is how you pull it out on the back. Now you can also use these small bags that some of our fly tie material comes in. These are bags that individual spools of thread come in. If I'm making a one-off dubbing, I'll just put it in here and take a Sharpie and write on what it is. You can also keep them in these type things, just the condiment cups. And one other thing, Wapsi does sell these that, the regular dubbing comes in. They've got a hard ABS plastic one that's very clear, and then one which is a little bit softer plastic. And these at J. Stockard are about $3 each. And the last time they had them on sale for $2.50, so I picked up 10 of them. So that's it for what we need to put it in. Now, one of the next primary components for a DIY dubbing is yarn. I will buy these kind right here. These multicolored. This one is a camouflage. It's got olives and tans and blacks and browns in it. And then one like this with some brighter colors, and then maybe one that has some whites and yellows. And you can get so many different colors from one $4 skein of yarn right here. And I'll show you how we do that in just a minute. And then let's see, the next thing we might need is, well, I use a coffee blender, a coffee grinder. Just a $15 Krups right here. This makes it so much easier. You don't necessarily need one of these. You can use the metal pet brushes. You can take 2 of those and rub it together. And if you're making a one-off blend, that's fine. I still think the coffee grinder is well worth the investment. And if you're making a good bit of dubbing at one time, it's a great tool to have. Now, probably the most important thing that you need for making a DIY fur dubbing, we've got the acrylic yarn, but you need some pelts. You need some furs. This is red fox right here. This one is a raccoon. I've got a possum right here as well. And then I've got several bags of squirrel fur that I use. So where can you get all these pelts and patches of fur? Well, you can certainly buy them from most of your fly tying supply houses, but a 2-inch by 2-inch patch of red fox fur or raccoon is probably going to cost you $5 or $6, and then a whole squirrel pelt is going to be about $17. But if you are a hunter or a trapper or live in a rural area and aren't afraid of picking up roadkill, then all these things can be free. Now, I'm not here to judge anybody about how they get their animal pelts, but I can tell you my wife and kids think I'm pretty crazy when I see a red fox on the side of the road and I pull the truck over. But you can save a ton of money doing that, and you can save a ton of money making your own dubbing. So one other tool that is convenient to have when you're making your own dubbing is just a pair of cheap hair clippers. I mean, you can use scissors, you can do this, but if you're making a lot, clippers just makes it so much easier. And you don't have to, skin a squirrel and save the pelt. You can just take the squirrel like this and then shave it right there, and then, the belly and the back and the legs. You can get quite a bit of squirrel fur from one squirrel with this tool right here. So that's it for everything you need. Let's get started in making some dubbing. Okay, we're going to get started by just making some straight up synthetic acrylic. Now the first thing you'll want to do is take your yarn. If you don't have a solid color yarn, if you've got one of these rolls right here that are multicolored, you just have to take it and then what I'll do, I'll wrap it around my fingers, and this is why this part takes forever. I just would do this whole skein right here, and then after about, you pulled off 50 yards or so, you're going to have all of this color, and then eventually this yarn will go into the next color. It's maybe that lighter tan right here, and then maybe this darker, and then the brown, etc. So after you've done that, and again, your bundle would be a good bit bigger than this, what you'll end up with are just a bunch of colors of yarn. And these tans, and then if you had a colored one, blue, purple, some yellows and greens and more olives. So I've got a bunch of these that I just saved because, you know, that one skein of yarn is going to make so much of this that it will probably last you forever. So what you'll want to do after you've pulled out all your colors, just take one strand right here and then double it over on itself many times. And then, you see, I've got that right there, and just take scissors. I use regular scissors for this, and then just cut it into 1/2 inch to maybe slightly shorter than 1/2 inch, maybe 3/8 of an inch. You'll cut a bunch of these little pieces right here. Then what you'll have are just a bunch of, you know, small pieces of yarn like this. So let's say, for example, we're going to make brown dubbing first. Next, take your coffee grinder and then just put, you know, maybe half of that we just made right there in here. Because a little bit makes a lot more than you'd realize. Then we just spin it. And then here is some brown dubbing. Pretty simple, pretty easy to use. It was really that quick. Now what you'll want to do first, say you just wanted to make plenty of synthetic dubbing, I would probably start with white. Or start with whatever color you want. But say I wanted to make various shades of tan and light and brown, I would probably just start with doing straight up white. So here's a good mix of just white, acrylic, synthetic dubbing. This would make a great dry fly body if you were doing a white pattern. But, so maybe you make a little batch like this and then just put it in one of your holders, containers right here. And then put it back in there. Throw just a few pieces of brown in there. And that's going to give us a slightly off-white, maybe a tan. Now you might not be able to tell, but this is definitely a little bit darker than that one we just did. If you put it in your container right next to it, you'd be able to see. But then you might want to make it just a little bit darker. So we put a little bit more in there for the next batch. And this one, there's one that didn't get mixed in there, but this one's going to be just a little bit darker. And you can do that until you go from, you know, your white to your brown and have any mix of colors you want in between it. Now you do the exact same thing with your yellows and blues. You might start off with a blue and then just mix in some white and it'll make it a lighter blue, and then mix in a little bit more white and it'll be an even lighter blue. So that's it. That's as simple as it is. And I've got a couple of containers like this where I just started off. Here's the white right here. And then I got a little bit darker. I started mixing in some olives and some browns, and then went to some straight greens. Then I got some crazier colors down here. Now I got a couple of containers like this for, you know, every color I might ever need. So that's it for the acrylic. Very easy, very straightforward. Next, let's start going to the furs. Now the first one we'll do with the furs, this is a possum. So say you're sitting down to make some dubbing, you've got your possum pelt, you've got some acrylic yarns, and you're going to make a whole batch of various colors of possum. Now, first thing you'll want to consider is, okay, do I want to make it real spiky or do I want to make it really clean? See, this possum fur here, it's got a good bit of guard hairs, but underneath it's very, very white, almost a rabbit-like consistency, but it's just a little bit different. So if you want to make the first batch, and this is what I usually do, I'll make a first round without the guard hairs. So in this case, what I'll do, I will take my scissors, take a big clump of it, say right here, and then just cut it out with the scissors. And then I will just pull some of these guard hairs out. So if you can see that right there, you've got the under fur and then a slightly darker fur, and then you've got the guard hairs coming out the top. So I'll just try to pull these guard hairs out. And you're not going to get them all, but you can get most of them. So now we've got a decent little mix of possum right here with just a few guard hairs still mixed in. And I'll go ahead and put this straight up into the mixer. Now it doesn't take too much, but there's a little bit of static, so some of this is sticking to the top right there. So this is just straight up 100% possum. Now you can leave some like this, but this would be, even without the guard hairs in here, this would be a little bit hard to get dubbed onto a thread. So what you would want to do, say you wanted to keep this color maybe just a little bit lighter, throw just a little bit of the acrylic yarn in here. And this is going to just give it a different consistency and make it a little bit easier to dub. So let's spin this one. So now this one I would say is probably 80% possum with 20% of the acrylic. So this is going to dub pretty good onto a thread. This is going to be fairly easy to work with. Now it's still got a few guard hairs, but that's fine. You can certainly live with that. Now I will do this with, by that method of trimming this out with my fingers, with the scissors, and make several different colors for that. Let me show you. Here's, two that I just made a little while ago with a purple and a little bit lighter purple right there. And I would, open this up, put this in here. This one is your natural possum color right there with a little bit of white in it. But I might make this in, purples or blues or yellows and olives, all the standard colors that I would want. And after I've done that, here's where it gets a little bit more fun. I'll take my clippers and then just cut some of this out, leaving the guard hairs and everything in. So just kind of shave a good bit of this out. Now you'll have a big mess with all the guard hairs and everything in it. And this next round of dubbing, I'm going to leave all that in there, and I'll show you how we do that. Okay, so time-lapse photography there. I made a big bunch just by shaving a big piece of that possum pelt, and I'll just take a small clump of it, maybe. Just use your best judgment. You'll see after you've mixed a little bit of it how much it makes. This will make a pretty good bit right here. So I'll put that in there and say I wanted to make some olive. So, and maybe I don't quite want a 50-50 mix, but maybe 60-40, 60% natural possum and then 40% of this acrylic. So just make your best judgment right there. You can always add more as you go. So let's spin this and see how it looks. Okay, it looks pretty light right there, but when you bunch it up and how it's going to look on the hook, it's going to look a little bit more olive. And maybe you like that color, maybe you want it to be a little bit more olive. If you want it to be a little more olive, just start putting some more of this in here. Now we might be getting closer to a 50-50 mix, but we're going to get closer to a deeper, darker olive color as well. Now you might not be able to tell that is more olive, but it definitely is. And if we put this in the container right next to the previous one, you'd be able to tell that there's a lot more green in this one than the one we just did. Now, remember we made this batch without taking the guard hairs out. So this, while it will dub on your thread pretty easily, it's still going to be very buggy and have quite a bit of guard hairs. So what you might want to do, and I do this a lot of times, I just kind of bunch it up and then take my scissors and let's see, just cut it right in here. Cut you know, maybe 1/2 inch little chunks right here, and then just mix it right back. So now this will be just a little bit easier to dub on there, but this is probably, I'd say after we added that second chunk of, you know, the green acrylic, this is probably a 50-50 mix between natural and, you know, synthetic. Just put this one in here, then go on to your next color. Now here is also something that I like to do. Say maybe I've made, you know, 1/2 dozen of my primary colors right here. Let's get crazy and add a little bit of sparkle to it. So this Angelina, I'm not sure what this is called, just angel hair kind of stuff. So let's do this with the brown. So I've got some brown right here. I'll put that whole chunk in there, and it doesn't take a whole lot of this stuff. Just want to pull out, I don't know, maybe that much right there. And as you got this, again, probably 1/2 inch pieces. Just cut them straight into your coffee grinder. And this is going to make some pretty cool looking magical dubbing. So you see that? That's really cool stuff right there. Gives a little bit of flash. And oftentimes what I will do my 6 colors right here. I'll make about twice as much as I need, and then I'll have a purple, and then a purple with some sparkle, and then, you know, some olives, and then the bottom row I'll have sparkle in it, and the top row will just be plain. Now that was how you do possum. So this right here is just a piece of raccoon hide. I would do the exact same thing with this, but for raccoon, for the most part, I will just shave it all. I will shave, you know, a big chunk of it. I don't necessarily take the guard hairs out. I like having this mixed in, but the raccoon is definitely a different color. The possum, recall, was pretty white in the underfur, while the raccoon is this Adam's gray almost. And now fox fur, exactly the same thing. This is a big patch of a red fox I've got here. And this is a little bit more interesting. So you've got the red fox, that's what you see, that's the color of the fox, but underneath it's got very, very gray underfur, and then a little bit of brown as it starts to get away from the underfur, and then the red and light tips right there on the end of the fur. Now, if you do it with this fox, I'll sometimes do it the same way, just pull a chunk of it out and cut it with my scissors, and then pull the guard hairs out, and then you can make, it's a mostly gray dubbing, similar to the raccoon. But also what I'll do with this one, I will just shave it off and then use all of it to make some really spiky dubbing. When you've shaved a big chunk out, you'll have something that looks like this right here. It's got some of the reddish, lightish brown, and then some of this gray, really fine underfur. So let's put this one in our coffee grinder and then mix it up. So I'm just going to put enough purple in here to give it the hint of purple. We'll see how it turns out. Okay, that's going to look fine. One thing I should have mentioned, you really need to, if you just did the sparkle, you really need to wipe this thing out before you do the next one, or you might get a little bit of this, you know, flash sparkle in there. It's not a big deal, but I do have a few chunks in there. So there's a little bit of a purple, you know, a red fox with a purple tint to it. And this stuff would dub as is, just like that. But what I would probably do with this one, since I did it with all the guard hairs and everything in there, I would just do this again. Take it and, you know, cut little 1/2 inch strips right here. So this is, any of these really long guard hairs, they are, you know, getting cut in half, so to speak. And then just mix it again. Now you've got a nice light purple fox dubbing mix. Now what you can also do, you know, maybe you were making a whole container of fox of the various colors, and then you made some of it with a little bit of the sparkle in there. You can mix fox and raccoon and, possum. Just make any blend you want. Now, the last one I'll show you is just how I do squirrel. You can buy squirrel pelts and treat them just like we did with the fox and possum and everything else, but I usually don't because they're pretty expensive and squirrels are very easy to get. So I'll take a squirrel, then I'll take my clippers, and then I will just shave it. This right after I've harvested it, trapped it or however I got the squirrel. While it's still, kind of fresh, you don't necessarily want to do it when it's frozen. You just shave it. And then you can even keep the gray separate from the white, but I will shave all the usable fur from the squirrel, and then you'll get something like this. So this is a mix. This is one squirrel I got in 2019, but you can see where the white belly fur is here, and then some of the gray fur. So this one was harvested in April, so it's not a winter squirrel. It doesn't have too much under fur, but it's got plenty. I mean, it's still got enough that you can make some great dubbing out of it. So let's try this. Let's put this one in here. Again, clean out this if you need to. Still got a little bit of that fox in there. So let's just put, I don't know, a good chunk of this in here right now. And then spin it, and this will be straight up 100% squirrel. Okay, just pull this out right here. And this, you can dub this on there just like this. It will dub pretty easily, but what you might want to do to make it just a little bit easier to work with, even if you want to keep the natural squirrel color, just take, what I would do in this case, I would put just a small bit of white and then a small bit of brown. And that is going to, it will mix up nicely and still look almost like 100% squirrel, but it will be, 90% squirrel and 10% acrylic. So you see that? We didn't really change the color much when we added a little bit of white and a little bit of brown. This still looks 100% like natural squirrel. And I will make this and put this in one of my boxes, and then I will make all the various colors. And with the squirrel, I like to go with purple and pink and some olives and yellows, because I do make a squirrel tail nymph that I fish all the time. And this is one of my go-to, homemade dubbings right here. So that's really it for how you make homemade dubbings. You got your fox and raccoon and possum and squirrels. It's as simple as that. And, that's one of the fun things about it, is just mixing and matching and play around till you find a color combination that you like. Maybe mix in some of the sparkle, maybe mix in a couple of different type of furs, and just see how it works for you. So that's it, everybody. I hope you enjoyed it. Hope you learned something. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time.